Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, Technical Agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator, and on this week's Field Friday segment, I thought we'd talk about something that everybody's starting to see driving the countryside. It's been going on for a little bit, but it's really exacerbated now with this hot weather continuing and lack of rain in most areas. But as you drive around and look at these cornfields, you see an awful lot of brown pockets out there. They're getting bigger. All these areas of corn are just dying rapidly. So what's really causing, something like that to happen in our cornfields? Realistically, there is no one answer. It's some type of additional stress to that corn plant that's shutting it down early because it just couldn't handle the stresses that it was under, and it just is basically dying rapidly. But let's look at a couple of things that could be factors out there that could be causing it. First of all, one of the things that we keep getting hit with, especially in some of the western part of our territory, is corn leaf aphids. We seem to continue to get corn leaf aphids come in really late in the season, and especially on fuller season corn, but that's not the only places it'll happen. But I've got a couple pictures here of the aftermath. The aphids are basically gone now, but here's some corn I was in very recently where I was walking along some nice looking corn, and then all of a sudden you get into a really bad burnt up pocket, and it's all the same row. If you look at this corn, it's got some black leaves. It's that sooty mildew that we've seen in soybean aphids in the past, but we also see it in corn where those aphids are excreting their passings or whatever you want to say onto the leaves below it. They turn black and get a mildew on. That itself doesn't necessarily cause that plant a lot of stress. It does inhibit the amount of photosynthesis that can be going on in those plants, but what it really is telling you is there's a lot of aphids on that plant above sucking the sugars out of that plant. And obviously this corn struggled with some of the conditions we had with moisture, that it didn't need any of that additional stress or competition, and it's just basically gotten overwhelmed and shut that plant down. Here's actually a test plot drone footage that I took recently, and you can see there's a strip here that 6 rows, all the same, obviously same hybrid, same planting date, same everything, but there's little strips that are brown out there. As you walk out there, you're walking through this and you'll run into this. This is the same aphid pockets at the corn damage pictures I showed you. So that's one of the things that can be causing a problem. Obviously, with some of this hot and dry weather, we also had some spider mites out there. It could be a pocket of spider mites. I've seen those do the same thing. Same thing, they're sucking the sugars out of those plants. They're really super tiny, but their populations can be so high that even at that, they can stress that plant enough where there's pockets that get shut down. Spider mites typically are more of an edge, starting on the edge of a field. There's lots of that going on as well. So let's talk about that. The edge effect that we're seeing this year, we haven't really seen much before. It's been all over Twitter, a lot of social media pictures, but here's some pictures too of what that kind of looks like. There's no reason for this corn in this edge of the field on this contour to be brown if it wasn't for the edge effect. This is a bean field next to it. I think this field, kind of faces to the west and southwest. I think we've had some of those hot, dry winds blowing off of those soybeans and just continually sucking more moisture out of that edge of that corn. It's added heat, added transpiration loss, and I think that's part of what's going on. It's just getting blasted a little bit harder than the rest of the field. So you see a lot of that driving around. If that edge effect was along brome grass or a waterway, that could be spider mites. They tend to move in from grass, but if it's like this and along a bean field, it's probably just additional heat stress from that wind that's come in. We've had quite a bit of that. If you have some pockets, sometimes it's soil type. There's obviously some lighter soil types out there that shut down and lost moisture, or didn't hold as much moisture, so those plants shut down earlier. That could be causing some of these pockets. You'll see that on some of these side hills. Some of that is also causing areas of brown corn. Not likely, but there could even be some of these areas of wetter soils that a guy maybe rushed out and planted just a little bit too quick. There wasn't a lot of that this spring, but I have seen some hatchet roots that we thought the planting conditions were perfect, but they weren't. And it might be just in small little micro areas, but that could be showing up now as well if those root systems were basically fighting that sidewall compaction. It doesn't have as big of an area of soil that it's exploring, so therefore it's not taking up as much for nutrients or moisture. That could also shut that plant down a little quicker when under the stress. So I guess there's lots of things that could be going on. It could be a combination of multiple, but likely that's one of those are the key things that are probably showing up in your fields that have burnt up areas. A lot of those areas are showing up if you went out into them when they first started to show. There are a lot of nitrogen deficiencies, one of the first things you'll see. That may not have anything to do with the nitrogen that was applied to the field, whether it was fertilizer, manure, or what have you, but these roots cannot extract nitrogen from dry soil. They need some moisture for that to happen, and if there's some reason they lost nitrogen or lost moisture a little bit quicker, that's where mostly the soil type comes in. But the first thing that started to show on a lot of these pockets was nitrogen deficiency. So there's a whole host of things. It's typical agronomy. It's usually never one thing. It's usually a combination of things or variable things that could be going on out there. We definitely are seeing that this year. But just thought I'd touch base. I've been getting quite a few questions on what's causing some of this. We haven't seen this for quite a while. It's probably worse this year than I've seen. But there's lots of things that are out there, and they all kind of make that plant do the same thing, stress out and kind of turn brown and shut down the plant. The other thing I'd make a comment on, and we'll maybe talk about this again in a future Field Friday, but those areas, if they're of any size, they will be lodging. Those roots and those unable to take up moisture and nutrients, especially nitrogen when this plant really needs it, they're going to suck all those nutrients and all that moisture out of those stalks to try and finish that ear as best as that plant can. That will lead to weak stalks, and those pockets will be going down. So if they're a sizable area in your fields, even this edge effect, a guy may want to watch those edges and maybe have to combine those a little early. It sounds weird, but it's something to consider because they will be stressed enough where stock integrity is not going to be good there. So just thought I'd touch on a few of those points, kind of educate you on what might be going on out in some of your fields. We've seen them all over the place driving around, and just wanted to touch on that. So with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.